Hey there. This is a quick introduction to Maya for an animator tutorial. I just want to say a couple of quick things about it. One, the things that I'm going to show you right now can be interpreted and will even work for very complex problems. And what I mean by that is I'm going to animate a very simple bouncing ball, a perpetual ball bounce. But if you take the things that I'm teaching you in this tutorial, you you can apply them to a way more complex type of problem, be that a very difficult type of motion or a complex character rig. So pay attention closely to what I'm saying, but understand that even though I'm animating a perpetual ball bounce, it's not about that. What it's about is the techniques that can be applied. And if you will learn how to do that, then animation is easy. I tell my students that all the time. Animation from a computer animation standpoint is easy. It's a bunch of techniques that you can put together and solve problems. Hey, if I can do it, you can do it. What is difficult is acting. And let's face it, that's what really matters. That's what our audience is looking at. Okay, so I'm going to try and spin this off very quickly. All right. If you look at my Maya desktop here, you will notice that I have already got a custom view. I'm not going to go into all of those things today, but I have a custom shelf here, and my menus are missing, or at least some of them are. You'll also notice I'm working on a Mac, and that's because it's what I prefer to work on. But whatever, the things that I'm going to tell you will translate very, very well. Okay, so just really quick about preferences. If you want to adjust your preferences, there's this quick access here, and it's this little orange running man. Looks like the old AOL character being chased by a gear. So anyway, you can click on that, and it will take you to your preferences. Things like animation. I'm going to be using linear and linear for the tutorial that I'm doing today. Okay. Another very important thing where Maya is concerned is that you work with projects. Countless times, even now after almost a whole year, my students are still forgetting to do this in some cases, and it's so important. You should take sticky notes and put it all over your monitor, whatever. But Maya likes to work with projects, and I'm a real stickler for this. And it's because Maya can be very persnickety when it comes to where it looks for things or where it wants to put things. All right, so what does that mean? Well, it means this. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Project Window. Now, in my project window, you'll notice I've got this Maya 101 folder. I'm actually going to do something very similar here. And so I'm going to click on New here, and I'm going to call this Learning Maya for Animators. And I'm going to put it on my desktop. And so there we go. Now, my project is set, but just in case you aren't 100% sure, I'm going to go here to File, and I'm going to go to Set Project. And I'm going to go and select my Learning Maya. Where is it here? There it is, Learning Maya for Animators, and I'll click Set. Now, if I go to something like File, Save Scene As, it will actually be saving that to my project into the Scenes folder. So everything's good. We're not ready to save yet, but everything's good. Okay, quick tour of the interface. We have menus, and we have like a toolbar with selection filters and render settings and different modes. Maya is very, very mode sensitive. We've got this shelf here that we can customize. I've got my own shelf that I've set up here. I actually have more complex ones, but for what we're doing today, I just wanted to show you one. So this is like the BH Ghost add-on or plugin that I've put into Maya. And this one here is a button that I created that's specifically for selecting only curves. Now that's not going to work for today's tutorial, but it's one that I created. So anyway, we've got this toolbar for our viewport. If we come over here, we've got our channel box and our layer editor. This is where we do all of our transforms, and we could set keys and things like that here. We've got display and animation layers. Again, I use that quite often. We won't be doing that much today. We've got our transport controls, playback, things like that. Our time slider. I'm sorry, our time bar, and then we have our actual time slider here, which is allows us to set a frame range and things like that. So today, for instance, we're going to be working with the numbers 13 and 24 for our endpoints here. I've got animation layers, selectability here. I've got my frame rate, looping, auto key, and then I've got some feedback from Mel and tools down at the bottom. My viewport itself, very prominent in my screen here. Obviously, it takes up most of the space. Let's talk about navigating that really quickly. First of all, it doesn't have to be a single viewport. You can have custom viewports, but probably the most simple thing that you'll do, or you'll probably do it by accident, is to tap your space bar. And then when you do that, you'll notice that it goes to like these different views. And look at that, I've already blown that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to make this, I'll go to a save layout here and I'll make it a 4 view. So there we are. Okay, that's better. So now I can tap back and forth between these. There we are. And I've got my different views that I can work with. These are all cameras, by the way, and all have camera settings on them, but I would recommend that you create your own cameras and think like a cinematographer, think like a storyteller. In everything that you do, think like a storyteller. Okay, how about navigating this window? Well, if you hold down the Alt button and you click with your left mouse button, you can orbit around or rotate around your scene. If you hold the middle mouse button, you can track. And if you hold the right mouse button, you can dolly in and out. You could also use your scroll wheel for that. All right, well, that's great. How about creating objects? That's very simple. You'll see that there's a create menu here, but you'll also notice if you press and hold your space bar, that we also have menus here. And you'll notice that these menus kind of match some of these ones here, and these ones are the actual viewport ones that should be here. And then we have these other menus that are context sensitive. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you how to control that, and we can go to Hotbox Controls and click on it, move our mouse over to show animation, move it over to animation only, and then let go of the mouse button. And now I only have that. It's a little bit cleaner. The Hotbox also has quadrants with different window setups and selection masks and different windows, stuff like that, tools that can be shown or hidden. Okay, creating objects. That's where we were. That's right. Okay, so I'm going to create a ball. Let's do this. So we'll go to Create Polygon Primitives Sphere. So there it is, the ball. As a matter of fact, because my memory could fail me at any point, not really, but I'm going to label it, because labeling your objects is always a good idea. All right, so there we have it. There's our ball. And you can see all of my transforms here: translate XYZ, rotate XYZ, scale XYZ. And then there's some other things here that have to do with the creation of the ball, or other parameters, more advanced stuff. We're not going to worry about that right now. So don't even think about it. Okay, now I want to switch to my front view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my hotbox and click on this Maya box, and I'll choose front view. So there we have it. Now I've switched that camera to a front view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt button and middle mouse click and drag to track it down. And that will do the trick. Now I got to move the ball. Well, we need to see the manipulator for that. And if you want to do that, you can just hit the W key for the move tool, the E key for the rotate tool, and the R key for the scale tool. All right, let's go back to the move tool, and let's get into the process of animating this scene. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the object into position. And what I'll do is I'll hit the S key to set our first key. Let's look at a couple of things really quickly. In our channel box, we now have these red, indicators on our channels. And we also have this red tick mark down in our time slider. All right, now, what we want to do in this animation is we are going to do what's called a perpetual ball bounce. In other words, it's going to keep bouncing, but I still want it to have weight. So we're going to talk a little bit about easing in and easing out and how we can use Maya or any 3D software for that matter to actually help us with that. But what we need to do is we need to set our extremes first. So I've set one extreme. Now we want to return to this position. So I'll go to frame 3 and I'll hit S again. Now we're going to go to frame 2 and I'm going to move the ball down to here, which will be my impact point, and I'll hit S again. So now I've set my 3 extremes. Now you might think, well, then we have to go and set our timing. No, we're not going to do it that way. My method of animating, or at least one of them, comes from what I learned by watching traditional animators working while I was working at Disney. And here's the thing. When they wanted to insert a frame, what they had to do is they had to insert a new sheet of paper. And so what they would do is they would, pick a drawing and another drawing, and then they'd put a new sheet of paper on the pegs. And it had a completely unique sound to it. I remember I could hear it around me all the time. But that's how they work. Now, I've also watched, master animators like Keith Lango and other people like that who animate on computers, and they have like these flawless methods that work. But what I like to do is I like to take like the whole breadth of my learning. And so what I've done is I've kind of taken a hybrid of both of those things. Now, they will say that they have hybrids as well, and I get that. Certainly, I may be putting my own little twist on this, but I am not reinventing anything here. These things are tried and true, and they work really well. Okay, that's it for that. What we're going to do now is we're going to begin to animate using my traditional and digital approach. So we're going to work with a dope sheet. Now, a dope sheet is similar to an exposure sheet from traditional animation. So I'm going to go to Windows, and I'm going to go to my animation editors and my dope sheet. Now, the reason I say it's similar is because it's a timing editor. We could plot keys on this and stuff like that. We could do quite a bit with it. But what I'm going to do with it specifically is I'm going to use it as a time-based editor. So I'm going to hit A to frame all 3 of the keys that I have. You can see them there. And then what I'll do is I'll hold down Alt and my right mouse button. I'm just going to dolly out just a wee bit, and then middle mouse button and drag this over, still holding down the Alt key. All right. Now, as I said to you before, a traditional animator, they take one drawing. Oh, I guess you can't see the drawings right now. Let's move them over here. I just use Alt and middle mouse button to do that. So there we are. Okay. So the traditional animator takes one drawing and then another drawing, and they insert a fresh sheet of paper. So that would go right here. So what I'll do is I'll select these 2 keys, and I'm going to hold down my middle mouse button and click and drag them over by 1. Did you just see what happened there? See, this is the great thing about 3D animation. Computers are wonderful calculators and terrible animators. So what I mean by that is this. I've got this position and I've got this position, and Maya just created this position for me, which is the halfway position between here and here. Well, isn't that wonderful? All right. So watch this. What I'm going to do is I'll set a key, and then I'm going to keep doing this. Select, move them over, set a key, and I'm going to do this until I have, about 7 keys from the top or the top of the ball drop to the impact. So let's see here. One more. And hit S. So now I have this. And basically from here to here, on every key, the ball is going twice the speed as the previous key. Because every time it was basically averaging the distance. So there we go. We'll do a little bit more with that later. Now, to do the rise up, we're going to have to ease in, or we're going to have to have that ball hit the ground and then begin to rise up, and then it will slow down as it hits the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert insert my new sheet or my new drawing or my new frame in between the last frame and the second last frame. So, oh, there's my son singing some opera in the background. Aren't you lucky? Okay, so I'm going to middle mouse click and drag that frame over, and then I'm going to hit S. And then I'm going to move to my last frame, middle mouse click and drag that frame over and hit S. And I keep doing that. Hit S. There we go. Middle mouse click and drag it over, hit S, move it over, move the key over, hit S, and now I have this, a perpetual ball bounce. All right, now there are some problems with this, so let's go and fix them. Now, this is where I use the graph editor. Now, my method of animating is this. You don't use the graph editor until you've animated something. It's not an animation tool, it's an editing tool. Now, that's not to say that there aren't good tools in it for animating or to help with animation or whatever. But again, I tend to take a visual approach to animation. In other words, I don't want you looking at a curve to determine whether the animation looks right. I want you to look on the screen and to see how something's actually moving through space to see if it looks right. So now I've done that, and I've got my distances averaged. I think I'm happy with this. Oh, you know what I'm not happy with, though, is the timing. So let's go and fix that for a second. I'm going to bring the dope sheet back one more time. Animation Editors, dope sheet. Oops. Again, that's Windows, Animation Editors, dope sheet. And I'm going to select all the keys that I have here. Now, there's a wonderful tool in this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my cursor over top of the dope sheet, hold down my space bar, and go Edit Scale. Now, I've done this recently, so I'm pretty sure that it's already set up. And look at that, it is. Let's look at this line here. Time Scale. I'm going to scale it to the power of 2. Now, I have 13 frames. So I'm going to scale it to the power of 2. That means I'm going to end up with 26 frames, right? Because 13 times 2 is 26. Should make sense. But anyway, what we're going to do is I'm going to scale it to that, which means that I'm going to take my animation, which is currently on ones, frame, 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 and I'm going to scale it to the power of 2 from frame 1. Let's do it. There we go. And now you'll notice that Maya has given me these extra frames that don't have any keys set on them. I'm okay with that. Maya may do that for me. It's a good in-betweener. It's just a terrible animator. All right. So then what I'll do is I'll expand my timeline. And here we have a new animation that, let's see, it should run in the span of a second. Let's see how it looks. Now it looks like there's a bit of a hit at the top of it. So let's go ahead and fix that really quickly in the graph editor, because that's a good place to edit. All right, here we go. Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And there it is. And we're only dealing with Translate Y here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And you can see my curve here. Now, there are a couple of problems here. If you notice the curve here, it kind of is, it's not really following a continuous slope down. It kind of slows down a little bit and then picks up speed. So what I'll do is I'll select these keys, and I'm just going to move them up just a wee bit to kind of fix that. That looks pretty good. And then I'll select all of these keys here, and I'm going to choose auto tangent. Now, I'm not going to get into a really deep explanation of this, but basically what this will do is it will smooth everything out. I can see that this has a little bit of work to be done on it yet as well. Let's just tweak that up just a wee bit. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. That looks all right. And let's go ahead and play back the animation now that it's nice and smooth. Not bad at all. Okay, let's prepare to render this. So what I'll do is I'm going to do a quick save scene as. This brings me to my project folder, Learning Maya for Animators Scenes, and we'll call this Perpetual Ball Bounce. Here we are. And I'm working on my teacher's version here. And now we're going to go back to the perspective window. So once again, what we do is we press and hold our spacebar, and we go to Maya, and we click Perspective View. And there we are. So now what we want to do is we actually just want to set up our scene. There we are. Oops, something like that. That looks beautiful. And if I play back the animation, I'm just going to move this down just a wee bit more. There it is. And there's our ball bounce. Okay, so I'm going to render this, but I'm not going to render it in a traditional sense. What I'm going to do is basically a studio test render, which would be a Playblast. So I'm going to right mouse click on my timeline here, choose Playblast options, and we're going to set it up so that I'm going to render up an image sequence. I'm going to do a JPEG sequence here. And I'm going to actually just scale it to like half the size. And I want to save that file as a Playblast. So what we'll do is we'll call this Perpetual Ball Bounce. And then underscore Playblast. So there it is. I'll hit Playblast. And there it goes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up After Effects, which I already have opened. So we'll just click here. And I'm going to import the images into After Effects. To do that, I'll right mouse click on my project window, choose Import File. I'll navigate to my project folder, which is on my desktop, Learning Maya for Animators, and it's in the Images folder. And I'll select one of the images. It doesn't matter. And it's going to import it as a sequence, and it's going to create a composition for me, which means that composition will actually be the size that my render was. So here we are, and you can see my animation here. That looks lovely. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to output this animation. So I'll just tap my spacebar to stop the playback, and I'm going to go to Composition, Add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. This will open up Adobe Media Encoder. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. There we are. And you can see that my Perpetual Ball Bounce Playblast is here. I'm going to go with the default settings. That's fine. The only thing I want to change is the location of the output file. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to choose. I'll just go back to my desktop, actually. There we are. And I'll put it into the Movies folder, and I'll hit Save. I'll click the little green arrow, and it'll just take a couple of seconds to render here. And then you'll hear a little bell ding, and that means that we are done. Et voila. You want to see it? Let's have a quick look. I'm going to open this with QuickTime. Drag it onto the screen here. Make sure that it's looping. And hit play. And there you have it, a perpetual ball bounce. Very simple. So this is not like all-encompassing. I get it. And as a matter of fact, you may look at it and think, wow, that's just too simple. But I want to caution you from writing it off because of that. Simple doesn't mean that it's not good. Again, the whole idea of this is that if you could do this, then you could actually do more complex animation problems. And again, the complexity comes in either the movement that you're trying to do, or the rig that you're working with, or the number of rigs that you're trying to work with. Whatever it happens to be, it's all basically the same thing. I just want to encourage you to animate lots, because you're only going to get good at this by animating. It's as simple as that. I also want to encourage you to be a storyteller in everything that you do, because that's what this is all about. And I want to remind you that animation is simple when you're talking about it from a technical perspective. What's difficult, what is the hardest part and the most important part, is getting the acting right. It comes down once again to storytelling. So enjoy this, learn from this, build on this, and I hope to see your name in the movie credits. Cheers.